Hey guys and gals, Iceman here. Welcome to Chilling Tales. Appreciate y'all for coming by. Like this video. Hit that thumbs up button. Blessings to those who like the video. We're about to get into a heinous grizzly bear attack. That's right. On this channel I tell a lot of black bear attack stories. Because I live in Michigan. It's closer to home, and these black bears, I think, are sort of underlooked. They're not as feared as the grizzly when maybe they should be. But grizzlies are on another level when it comes to their power and when it comes to their potential aggression. And strangely enough, this one was a lone male. All right, this wasn't a mother protecting its cubs. This wasn't a male bear that was startled on a trail. No, this one is far more eerie with how this attack transpired. So like this video, get the word out there. No sponsors here, nothing of that sort. Just my patrons and just my channel members. So if you want to support the channel, you can become one as well. Links in the description below. So Tifa was this beautiful, like, half Japanese chick. All right, this long black stringy hair, these big beady brown eyes. Petite stature about her. Granted, she wasn't that short. Just very... He thought it was the perfect body. Her boyfriend, Fagus. Now, Fagus was a guy who was from Wisconsin. His grandparents were rich. His parents were divorced. He actually looked a lot like me. He had blondish hair, not as red as mine in some spots. Very blondish hair, blue eyes. A bit tall, not quite as tall as me. I'm 6'4". Didn't quite have the stature as me, the muscle, but he didn't work out. But he was sort of a bad boy. Had a little piercing on his ear, would listen to rap. Started to grow himself a bit of a criminal record. He'd steal stuff, and I don't even want to tell you what he did to one of his buddies during a high school sleepover that got the cops called on him and sued. Okay? We're not going to get into that, but Fagus was an interesting individual. He started getting into smoking the Mary Jane, doing drugs, never went to college, moved around the country a little bit, but his grandparents were always there for him. He'd drive around their Bentley, go to their home, coax money out of them. They'd give him an allowance, and he'd knock up a few chicks driving around their Bentley, this and that. But Tifa's a chick that he met on the internet, and for whatever reason, she accepted him. So they kicked it off. He had a couple kids with other girls, was paying child support, dodging some elsewhere. But Tifa and him kicked it off. I don't know. She was sort of a submissive woman. Maybe she thought that Fagus was the embodiment of the American man. And in her ancestry, in her heritage, her family would tell her that's what she needed. So I don't know if she just thought that's what she needed or what. He did a good job tricking her. I don't know. But nonetheless, his grandparents had a cabin in Wyoming. Now, Wyoming is known for its grizzly bears. These big, husky, hulking creatures, glowing eyes in the night, long, yellow, bacteria-ridden claws, big, sharp teeth. Some of which can weigh over 1,000 pounds in nature. Okay, now, yeah, I'm telling you guys, they're more formidable than black bears. Okay. There's videos on YouTube. You can see grizzlies chasing black bears up trees, even unaliving them. Okay? But basically, that's where this little cabin was. Now, Fagus wasn't much for his wilderness knowledge. He had some street smarts, but he wasn't allowed to carry a weapon because of his felony charges, this and that. So he didn't really bring anything out there outside of a little can of pepper spray there on his keys and an axe, thinking maybe he could hack some wood, make a little fire like a woodsman or something, try to impress Tifa, go inside the cabin and maybe smash. I'm sure was what he had in mind. So they approach this cabin. They pull up to it in their little Subaru. Beautiful nature all around. It was backed up to the woods. This was the fall, October. Weather was just how it is now. The leaves on the trees were changing color and so forth. Tifa was enthralled by the nature surrounding her. They saw pileated woodpeckers, little beavers, little birds all over the damn place. No signs of bear. So they went into this cabin and sort of set their things out. The cabin was very clean. It was a modern cabin. His grandparents bought it with cash, and they'd go visit it every once in a while, but at this point, no one visited there for a year plus. His grandparents were in their 80s, so basically they were getting too old to travel around. So they stayed in Wisconsin, gave him the keys, and there he goes. They go into the cabin, make themselves tidy. Then, when the evening begins to strike, Vegas goes outside and starts hacking some wood. Gets a little fireplace ready. Tifa goes out there, wraps herself in a blankie. They have themselves some s'mores over the fire. Vegas is telling her all about his criminal past, just trying to impress her with his bad boy-esque attitude. And I believe that she just takes it all in strides, impressed by his connivingness and so forth. He was using bad language, saying nasty things, talking about the broads who did this and that to him, and Tifa was just eating it all up. Then they went inside the cabin, and Tifa got ready. She was very accommodating to men, and Vegas was one of the first real men in her life, if that's what you want to call him. He was 28 years old at the time. She was 23, just out of college, graphic designer or whatever, started her own little enterprise or whatever you want to call it. So basically, they had some time to themselves, you know. He did what he did. I don't know. They did whatever young folks do in a freaking cabin before they go to bed, you know? And that's when, after, they decided to crash out. They heard something scratching on the wall. You see, Vegas ended up making ramen noodles, putting eggs in them and so forth, put them on the little heat stove, and it just, the smell emitted outside. And this cabin wasn't used for a year plus, so the animals surrounding the area probably weren't used to smells coming out of it. A bear ended up raking its claws against the side, right up by the window, and they could hear it. Vegas runs out there. Hey, get the hell out of here, you beep, 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 just cursing the thing off, and the bear runs out into the woods. And that was that. It vanished into the night like a phantom. Vegas goes back in, cuddles up with Tifa. They end up trying to have a decent night thereafter. Somewhere in this, the bear made its way to the entry of the cabin. It had one of those flimsy screen doors, and the night was rather warm. They had a small fire going. So I think the bear was just able to push the damn door open, and then the door shut behind it. And they heard it. They heard the door slam. Tifa's eyes begin to widen. What was that? Do something about it, Vegas. So he gets up, screams at it, get the hell out of here, bear, get out of here, bear. And the bear turns around trying to run out of the cabin. But it can't because it's a swinging door. The door pushed open and then slammed behind it when it walked in. It used its massive head just to lightly push against it and the door wouldn't budge. And then it turned back to Fergus. Now Fergus grabbed one of the pots that were hanging on the wall. A Griswold skillet actually is what it was. A very heavy iron skillet, a 10-inch skillet. And he threw it at the bear as hard as he could. This skillet just hisses across the cabin and slams into the bear's shoulder. At that point, I believe the grizzly knew that it had to defend itself. But even still, it tried to exit the cabin. It saw the moonlight coming in from the window, so it stood up. This hulking thing. It was almost as tall as the inside of the cabin. About 9 feet tall when it stood up. It was insane. And its massive skull, Fergus could see the silhouette of it through the window, the moonlight coming in through the window. And that's when he saw how humongous this creature was that just walked into their cabin. It couldn't even fit through the glass window if it wanted to. Okay? The window was like, I don't know, 3.5 foot by 3 foot or something. And it couldn't fit through that rectangle. But it didn't end up breaking the glass. It just sort of looked at the window and pawed at it with its paw and realized it couldn't get out. And that's when it turned back to Fergus. It fell back on all fours and looked at him with its eyes glowing and just steam coming up from its mouth. That's when Fergus started backing up and the bear charged him. I think it knew that it had nowhere to escape. So it had to go after the perpetrator here, the one who just threw an iron skillet at it and was yelling at it, you know. It was sort of instilling fear, or attempting to anyway. Bears can pick up on that. I've seen several videos where they know if it's setting you off, just like in the wild. If it goes after a badger or a wolverine, the badger or wolverine's going to hiss and snarl and hiss and snarl, and to some extent, it can help cause the bear to run away. But it depends if the bear thinks it's worth a risk. And in this case, there was no escape from the damn cabin, so it had to defend itself, is basically what was innately going on here, according to my evaluation. So it charges Fergus. It just grabs him by the neck with its jaws and uses its front paws and heaves him over like it's tackling him. Fergus falls onto the ground, his body ragdolled, and the bear begins raking its claws into him. He's screaming like a wounded rabbit. Tifa is still in the bed. This was like a one-room cabin. It wasn't very big. The bed was in the corner, the fireplace was on the wall, and then Fergus was on the other side, now getting mauled by the bear. Tifa's in the blankets, just in her little, she's not wearing much. Terrified, extremely vulnerable, and she sees her new boyfriend getting obliterated by a 9-foot-tall creature. Tifa screams and screams, and the bear turns and looks at her across the cabin, and then back to Fergus, and just continues raking into him, and even grabs him by his neck with its jaws and heaves him over his shoulder and slams him into the ground like a wrestler. Tifa's screaming and screaming. Fergus is beginning to go unconscious. He's lost a lot of blood at this point. And the bear lets him free, and it sort of pivots back to the center of the cabin, just evaluating the situation. And it knows that it defeated the threat of Fergus. His body was ragdolled and desolate, immobile. So the bear backed up, and it heard Tifa just going off, just screaming so loud. Just a piercing, death-defying scream. And I think it terrified the animal, and it really didn't want to attack her. It started running over the cabin, just all throughout the cabin, boom, boom, boom. The whole thing was shaking with this bear just boosh, 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 boosh. And it'd go up to the walls, and it was trying to get out. Boom, 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 boom. Go up to the door, go up to the window. Went back at the Fagus's body and checked him out, made sure he was still immobile. And then Fagus, he turned, and he sort of shifted his weight, and the bear attacked him again. Tifa witnessed at this time just obliterating his body. Grabbed him right up here by his, what's that, the ulna muscle, or the ulna bone, and just stuck his teeth into him and just picked him up and just ravaged him like a pit bull, slamming him against the wall, slamming him against the door, slamming him into the ground and raking its claws into him all the more. These claws were like 6 inches long, okay? These massive yellow claws. It only did this for a couple seconds, but of course it seemed like a long time. At that point, Fagus couldn't even move. He was just groaning, just trying to get breath into his lungs that were probably collapsed at this time. So the bear let him go again. And it started running. It ran toward over by Tifa, and Tifa was just screaming bloody murder with a blanket over her. What a heinous, terrifying, nightmarish October evening this was. Ultimately, the bear ended up making its way toward the door again, and the heft of its body slammed into it, and it broke the door open. And that's when it saw an opening in it. So then it started peeling through it, and it just broke through the door. And the door just fell to pieces as the bear exited the small cabin. And then it vanished into the night. Fagus lay there groaning. Tifa, terrified. She tries to get service on her cell phone. She can't. Doesn't get any in the cabin. She knows that she has to drive out to the road. She throws on her bathrobe. Checks on Fagus. He's barely moving, barely breathing. She doesn't know CPR or anything of that sort. She tends to his wound, starts wrapping his shirts that he brought with him, that were in his suitcase, around his arm, around his neck, around his face, a big massive gouge along his face, his cheek nearly hanging off. She wrapped it all around that. And he just lay there seemingly paralyzed. Wrapped him up, put on her bathrobe, grabbed the car keys, ran out to the car, which, might have been a little risky, but what else could she do? With her cell phone in her purse, drove out to the road, tried to call the cops, couldn't get a hold of them because no reception, drive down the road a little bit, and finally she got a signal. That's where she called. And it took about 45 minutes for authorities to show up. They medevaced Fagus to the closest hospital. They tended to him. They decided not to approach the bear, pursue the bear. According to the story, it seemed like it was acting in defense. It wasn't like it was sniffing out the food, But that's what happens if you get stuck in a damn enclosed area with one of these things and you try to provoke it, I mean, maybe don't do that. But anyway, he ended up surviving with wounds and broken bones and some torn tendons that he gets to deal with now for the rest of his life. I don't know if that chick is still with him or not, but, these stories don't really make it too far. I think that a lot of these states and regions, they don't like to talk about this stuff because it hurts their tourism, People don't want to go out there if they hear these horrific incidents. So you might hear them from the locals, but they don't always make it far. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on that. If you will like this video, what do you think about that horrid bear attack? Yeah, we finally got one where they survived, but fortunately the girl was left alone. I don't think it was her fault. He should have been prepared, But anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace be with you.